You awaken to a haunting sound echoing through marble halls, the soft, sorrowful weeping of a kingdom in pain. But the tears aren't for a fallen hero or a glorious victory. They're for a young king trapped inside his own failing body. His limbs tremble uncontrollably, his gait is unsteady, and his once majestic face now bears the cruel marks of a secret curse. This is not just any ruler. He is Tutankhamun, the boy pharaoh of ancient Egypt, who at only 18 years old carries the heavy burden of divine blood, yet can barely stand to rule. For over 3,000 years, the pharaohs of Egypt were revered as living gods, their power believed to stem from an unbroken line of sacred blood. To protect this divine lineage, royal families practiced a shocking tradition: marriage between siblings, cousins, and close relatives. What seemed like a religious rite was in truth a dangerous genetic gamble that slowly poisoned the very blood meant to sustain their rule. Imagine a world where your family ties meant to strengthen your claim and preserve your legacy instead become the source of crippling deformities, mental illness, and early death. The boy king before you, Tutankhamun, drags a clubbed foot, suffers seizures, and struggles with severe spinal deformities. His life and the fate of Egypt's greatest dynasties are stained by the high cost of royal inbreeding. This is a story rarely told of kings and queens, whose godly image masked a tragic reality of genetic disaster. A tale where divine bloodlines twisted into a hereditary curse, leading to madness, political chaos, and ultimately the downfall of ancient Egypt's ruling elite. Over the next few minutes, we will unravel the mystery behind this royal curse. We'll dive into ancient myths, explore cutting-edge scientific discoveries, and reveal the shocking truth behind one of history's most fascinating and tragic experiments in power and blood. Prepare to witness the haunting legacy of a dynasty that tried to play gods only to become victims of their own fatal ambition. The practice of royal inbreeding in ancient Egypt wasn't born from ignorance or cruelty. It was rooted deeply in their religion and culture. The pharaohs believed they were earthly incarnations of the gods, especially Horus, the falcon-headed deity representing kingship and divine order. According to Egyptian mythology, the gods themselves married their siblings. Osiris wed his sister Isis, and their children followed suit. This sacred pattern set a divine precedent that the royal family was compelled to follow. Marrying within the family wasn't just tradition, it was considered essential to preserving the pure divine bloodline. This idea served two main purposes. First, it reinforced the pharaoh's status as a living god, connecting him directly to the celestial realm. Second, it prevented the dilution of power by keeping the throne within a tightly controlled bloodline, excluding outsiders and rival families. The earliest known sibling marriage in Egyptian royalty dates back to the 4th dynasty around 2550 BC. Over the centuries, this practice became increasingly strict and institutionalized, especially during the New Kingdom period. Pharaohs like Amenhotep III and Akhenaten took multiple wives from within their families, setting the stage for a genetic legacy that would have devastating consequences in the generations to come. While the royal families of ancient Egypt believed that marrying within their bloodline preserved divine power, the reality was far more tragic. Centuries of inbreeding led to devastating genetic consequences that affected the pharaoh's health and ability to rule. Many suffered from severe physical deformities: club feet, curved spines, elongated skulls, and misaligned teeth that made daily life a struggle. Tutankhamun, the famous boy king, was no exception. Modern CT scans and DNA tests have revealed that he endured a cleft palate scoliosis and a deformed left foot so severe that over 100 walking sticks were buried with him. His fragile body barely survived past his teens. But the damage wasn't just physical. Some rulers showed signs of mental illness, epilepsy, and neurological disorders, conditions that likely stemmed from genetic defects. Akhenaten, Tutankhamun's father, was depicted with unusual feminine features and elongated limbs, possibly reflecting hormonal imbalances caused by inbreeding. Ancient Egyptian physicians were remarkably advanced for their time, developing surgical techniques and medical treatments to manage these chronic conditions. Papyrus scrolls like the Edwin Smith. Papyrus describe attempts to treat neurological disorders and injuries common among the royal family. Despite their efforts, the health of the pharaohs deteriorated generation after generation, undermining their divine image and political stability. As the physical and mental toll of inbreeding worsened, the stability of Egypt's royal court began to crumble. Many pharaohs descended into paranoia, erratic behavior, and violent outbursts, symptoms now understood to be linked to neurological disorders common in genetically isolated populations. This turmoil led to intense power struggles within the palace walls. Advisors, priests, and foreign allies gained influence as weakened rulers became increasingly dependent on them to maintain control. One of the most infamous examples is Cleopatra VII, who, despite her intelligence and political savvy, bore the heavy genetic legacy of centuries of inbreeding. Historical accounts describe her as physically flawed but intellectually formidable. Her reign was marked by shifting alliances, personal drama, and fierce battles for power, ultimately culminating in her tragic suicide after defeat by Rome. The royal family's internal conflicts and deteriorating health made it impossible to govern effectively. Public faith in the divine nature of the pharaohs faltered as their physical ailments became harder to conceal. Coupled with mounting external pressures from rival kingdoms and the rising power of Rome, the once mighty Egyptian dynasties spiraled toward collapse. The political chaos and weakening of royal authority were as much a result of inherited genetic burdens as of military defeat. The devastating genetic decline within Egypt's royal family rippled far beyond the palace walls, shaking the very foundations of society. Enormous resources were funneled into caring for physically and mentally impaired pharaohs, funds that might otherwise have supported agriculture, infrastructure, or defense. Medical treatments, specialized servants, and custom equipment drained the kingdom's treasury, contributing to economic strain and social unrest. Records reveal that royal medical expenses sometimes consumed nearly 10% of Egypt's annual revenue. Culturally, the need to mask the pharaoh's ailments gave rise to a unique artistic style, idealized statues and portraits that portrayed rulers as flawless gods, concealing the harsh reality of deformity and illness. Architecture also adapted tombs and palaces featured ramps and wide corridors to accommodate disabled rulers, and complex mechanical devices may have been early assistive technologies. Religiously, the traditional belief in divine kingship faced growing skepticism. As the physical weakness of the rulers became apparent, faith in their godlike status wavered, weakening the priesthood's authority. Foreign diplomats and traders, too, noticed these signs of decline eroding Egypt's international standing. Ultimately, the biological tragedy of royal inbreeding accelerated the political and cultural collapse of ancient Egypt, reshaping its legacy and setting the stage for new powers and new ideas about leadership. The devastating genetic decline within Egypt's royal family didn't just affect the pharaohs themselves, it sent shockwaves through the entire society. Enormous resources were poured into caring for rulers crippled by inherited diseases, diverting wealth from crucial public projects like agriculture, infrastructure, and defense. Historical records indicate that medical expenses for these debilitated kings consumed a significant portion of the kingdom's budget, fueling economic strain and social unrest among the common people. Artistically, this crisis gave birth to a distinct style of idealized portraiture. Sculptors and painters crafted flawless images of the pharaohs, masking their physical deformities and reinforcing their divine status. Architecture also adapted tombs and palaces, featured ramps and spacious corridors designed to accommodate the pharaohs' disabilities. Some mechanical devices found in burial chambers may have served as early assistive technologies. Religiously, the once unquestioned belief in the pharaohs as living gods began to erode. As physical frailty became harder to hide, public faith wavered, undermining the authority of the priesthood. Foreign diplomats and traders noted these signs of weakness, damaging Egypt's prestige on the international stage. In sum, the biological tragedy of royal inbreeding hastened the political, economic, and cultural collapse of ancient Egypt, reshaping its legacy and paving the way for new forms of leadership. The tragic saga of ancient Egypt's royal families stands as a powerful testament to the devastating consequences of unchecked ambition and blind faith in tradition. For over 3 millennia, the pharaohs clung to the belief that their divine blood made them gods on earth, unique, pure, and invincible. But what this story ultimately reveals is that no amount of divine myth or royal decree can override the fundamental laws of biology. The relentless pursuit of pure bloodlines through incestuous marriages meant to preserve power and sanctity became a slow-moving genetic catastrophe. Generation after generation, the royal families were weakened physically and mentally trapped in a cycle that eroded their health, their authority, and eventually their very existence. Kings and queens who were supposed to embody perfection were instead burdened with crippling deformities, neurological disorders, and mental illness. Yet despite their suffering, the pharaohs and their physicians demonstrated remarkable resilience and innovation. Ancient Egyptian doctors developed surprisingly advanced medical knowledge and treatments to manage genetic diseases they could not fully understand. They crafted surgical techniques, herbal remedies, and assistive devices to prolong the lives of rulers who might otherwise have perished young. These medical advancements, born from necessity, would echo through history and contribute to the foundations of modern medicine. Politically, the decline of these royal bloodlines triggered upheaval far beyond the palace. As the pharaohs grew weaker, power shifted into the hands of priests, advisors, and foreign powers. The illusion of divine kingship faded as the people saw rulers who could barely walk, speak, or rule effectively. The very system that had maintained Egypt's greatness began to unravel, leaving the kingdom vulnerable to conquest and foreign domination. The final chapter came with Cleopatra VII, the last of the Ptolemaic dynasty. She was a woman of extraordinary intellect and political skill, yet her reign was overshadowed by the heavy burden of hereditary illness that traced back through generations of royal inbreeding. Her alliances with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony were as much strategic political moves as they were personal relationships aimed at preserving her throne. But in the end, even her brilliance could not stem the tide of collapse. Her suicide marked not just the fall of a queen, but the end of an era, the close of the world's longest experiment in royal incest. The legacy of these ancient rulers offers a profound lesson for humanity. It is a stark reminder that no tradition or ambition should ever defy the natural laws that govern life. Genetic diversity is not just a scientific concept, it is a foundation for survival strength and resilience. When power becomes blinded by hubris and refuses to adapt, it carries the seeds of its own destruction. Today, as we advance in genetics and medicine, this history underscores the importance of humility and respect for the complexity of human biology. It challenges us to question inherited traditions and to embrace knowledge that safeguards health and well-being over outdated beliefs. Ultimately, the story of Egypt's inbred pharaohs is not just a tale of ancient tragedy. It is a timeless cautionary tale. It calls us to remember that true greatness comes not from bloodline alone, but from wisdom, adaptability, and the courage to learn from the past. As we reflect on their rise and fall, we are invited to honor their humanity and heed their warning lest we repeat the mistakes of those who once dared to call themselves gods.